Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Peach Pundit Podcast. Jason Pye, joined as always by Buzz Brockway and Scott Turner.
Yo.
Hello. What is that?
It was something cool.
All right. So game one last night. Braves break out, score 5 runs in the first 3 innings. And unfortunately we lose Charlie Morton with a broken fibula, right? Is that what it was? And but we win the game 6-2. We take game 1 of the World Series. Game 2 is set to start here in about just under 2 hours. First of all, the team looked great last night. Yeah, there were a couple innings that
Timeout. You guys we're burying the lead already. The lead is, let's talk about the Tyler Matzik performance in the 8th inning in game 6 of the LCS. And let's harken back for just a moment to last week's podcast, when I told you all that you want Tyler Matzik in a clutch spot over Luke Jackson. Can I just get a little bit of love for that, please?
Cheers. Well, I thought you compared Minter to Minter, who was outstanding last night too. But look, I thought that Luke Jackson we saw in the regular season was the same Luke Jackson, was postseason Luke Jackson, that those were the same guy. And in the League Championship Series, postseason Luke was a different dude. He was not that dude. He was the other dude. But last night, Luke comes in.
He was just a dude playing a dude that's playing another dude.
He was, yes. Last night, however, Luke was solid.
Yes, he was. And after the game, after the LCS game 6 that clinched the World Series berth for the Braves, thanks completely and totally to the work of Tyler Matzik in the 8th inning.
He was outstanding. He was
after the game. Luke Jackson had an interview live on the field with Fox 5, our local news affiliate, where he said, "The Dodgers are my daddy." Those were his words. And he's not wrong.
He wasn't wrong.
He wasn't wrong.
Houston,
and he has had a great season.
Game 1.
Yeah. So, but thank you for the props and the love for getting that right. And
I mean,
we have to point out that Jock Peterson, as they were warming up, looked at Luke and said, I need you to step up, 77. And he did. So Jock straightened it all out.
Yeah.
We're good.
Jock is just one of those MFers,
now the
right?
Same as regular season Luke, and we're good to go.
I was about to say, did you guys read the Players Tribune article?
Yes.
Yeah, that was really good.
And honestly, Jock Peterson, if you're watching the show, and I know you're not, but if you are, let's go hang out, man, because I feel like we're on the same vibe here.
So the couple things I'll note about and Scott, I will give credit where credit is due. You called it on Matzik. He was absolutely lights out in game 6. He had a not, I wouldn't say a tough outing last night, but he gave up a run, gave up 3 hits. But he's entitled to. It didn't cost us anything.
He's pitched in every single postseason game this season.
And look, and that Astros lineup is awesome. I mean, it is. Dodgers is an outstanding lineup. That Astros lineup, I mean, their run differential is unreal.
Yeah. So couple quick things. The points of concern. AJ Minter went 2 2/3 innings last night. He's probably unavailable until at least game 3, probably game 4.
Yeah.
After pitching what they said last night was a career high, I think 40 something pitches,
42 pitches.
42 pitches. Jackson, yes, he had a good outing. Only gave up 1 hit, struck out 3, but he's pitching anything in 2/3. So he's probably we need Fried to go 7 tonight.
Yeah.
Probably. We need to turn it.
Right. I mean, and look, and they're going. I don't know that the Braves announced who they're going to make a roster move and bring another pitcher on. I haven't heard if
it's a Davidson, I think.
Tyler Davidson. Okay.
Yeah.
He's a starter. But no
pitched great at AAA and decent in the regular season when he was on the major league roster. Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, now I think they have to shuffle what the plans they had. Fried's going tonight. That's about all we know right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think you want to, what you had laid out first was Morton.
Anderson goes tomorrow.
Morton, Fried, Anderson, bullpen games 5, 6, and 7. You go Morton, Fried, Anderson again, and now you can't do that. So they're going to have to lay this whole thing out again.
You go Anderson tomorrow. Then we probably have a bullpen game in game 4. And I mean, look, if we take care of business, it's not a problem by game 4.
Right.
But I can see a scenario where Minter or Smiley start that game.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
we need, last night we had some good hitting last night. Every starter had a hit. A couple of them had a few of them had 2 hits. Obviously Soler got us started on the right foot last night with that monster home run and then
blasted it. Yeah.
Which he made history last night. It was the first person to lead off a World Series game with a home run.
Third pitch
amazing?
gone. Yeah.
117 World Series. That's the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Which is crazy when you consider people like Ricky Henderson, who hit leadoff home runs all the time, played in a bunch of World Series.
Yeah. I don't want to make predictions about, because I think we all know how we've Braves in the past have taken a couple games of a World Series and gone on to lose a bunch of games, win another one, and then push it into Game 7. They lose Game 7. We have been here before, but I think just based on, I actually have a pretty good feeling about this. I'm not saying, I just say I have a good feeling about this.
Yeah.
The same
match up really well against the Astros. It's an awesome team, obviously. Very, very experienced, lots of postseason and World Series experience on that roster. And Dusty Baker's just a all-time great manager.
Yeah.
But I think we match up well against them.
Well, it's the same feeling. I've had the same feeling I had going into Game 6 against the Dodgers. I had a really good feeling about that game. I was very, 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 I think, very happy about how that game turned out, obviously, but had to contain my excitement a little bit, but no predictions. But I will ask you guys, changing, I guess, levels of sports. Do you think Georgia's going to be Florida this weekend?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. The curse is not a real thing. And the talent level between those two teams is so disparate. There should be no excuse at all.
It's possible. Of course, it's a rivalry game. Crazy things have happened in that series.
Yeah,
but seems to me the biggest debate for Georgia is which red hot quarterback do you start? I mean, that's kind of the biggest decision they got to make.
I know. JT Daniels has been taking first string snaps, but I haven't seen an update on who will start. But I know I'll be watching that game. Moving along to more interesting competitions, or I guess I should say potential interesting competitions. David Perdue is apparently making phone calls that he might run. He might primary Brian Kemp for governor. This is according to this came on. We saw this, I guess, about an hour or so before we started recording the podcast, and Perdue has been making calls to donors. Suggesting he could run. Apparently he's saying he could. Scott is not a happy camper right now. He is saying he could run. He could run if he thinks that Kemp is vulnerable to Abrams in a general election. Never mind that he just lost a race to a Democrat in a general election. Scott,
crappy candidate. He lost to a crappy candidate.
That is correct. Scott, since you are very visibly reacting to this, I will let you go first.
Why can't we have nice things, Jason? Why can't we have nice things?
I don't want him to run because it's David Perdue. That is not because I like Brian Kemp. I've met Brian on numerous occasions. He is an incredibly nice guy. I like him on a personal level. But I have met David Perdue on a couple of occasions. Not that he would remember me. But I don't get it. I don't get it.
I do. I think it's about ego. I think it's about, trying to make your legacy more appealing or shown in a better light than it is right now. You lost with an incumbency advantage. You lost. You ran a crappy campaign. We talked about it on this podcast where you didn't even show up for a debate. You gave your opponent uninterrupted time to make their case for why they were better than you. And there was a general arrogance during that campaign that came out, and it was awful. It was a train wreck in slow motion for those of us who watch political campaigns. I am not excited by this at all. I think Governor Kemp has earned the right to, and I don't count Candace Taylor and Vernon Jones as serious candidates, but I think he's earned the right.
Candace Taylor. Sir.
What's that?
Dr. Candace Taylor to you.
Well, all apologies to the educational level of Dr. Taylor. I just don't see them as serious candidates. I don't see them as viable whatsoever. I think Brian Kemp has earned the opportunity to make his case in a general election. His every objective measure you can point to, the economy growing, jobs growing in spite of a pandemic, the way he has handled the pandemic, trying to balance people's livelihoods and their public health interests, all of the and protect individual freedoms and liberties during all of that. I think he's earned the right to run as a Republican for governor and a reelect. He's earned it. He has my vote, period. There is nobody else that's going to get in the race at this point that's going to change my mind about that, because the job that Governor Kemp has done has earned that. So I just, I don't know why you do it other than to placate your own ego or to try to reestablish some sort of damaged version of a legacy. I just don't.
Buzz, what do you think?
So I think there's several things going on here. We have to. I want to first of all take you back maybe 6 weeks ago or so. The Trump PAC, the Save America PAC, released a poll. I mean, Donald Trump has been over and over saying we're going to find somebody to run against Kemp. He's yet to find anybody. He's been floating out Perdue's name for a while. They even released a poll. The Save America PAC released a poll that showed that with Trump's endorsement, Perdue, the best he could do is force a runoff with Brian Kemp. So it's not a slam dunk. And I think Kemp is in a stronger position now than he was 6 weeks ago with the Republican base. Trump's remarks, at the rally in Perry, where he, joked or mused or predicted or whatever that Abrams would be a better governor than Kemp. Trump's subsequent remarks that Republicans were going to stay home. All of that, I think, has helped Kemp, because many Republicans, even if they're angry with Brian Kemp for whatever reason, do not want. That doesn't mean they want Stacey Abrams to be governor. So I think he's in a stronger position now. So I think if you took that poll again, Perdue would have an even tougher hill to climb. There are just going to be lots and lots of Republicans who are going to say, why in the world are we doing this, having this bloody, drawn out, expensive primary when we should be uniting and solidifying ourselves in our position to run against whoever the Democrats nominate. So I think all of that's going on. There's also the backdrop of that Sonny Perdue, the former governor and former ag commissioner, wants to be chancellor of the university system of Georgia. Rumor has reached my ears that the Board of Regents, that idea met with a cool reception from the Board of Regents. So is this some sort of power play to try to pressure Kemp to spend a lot of political capital to take on the Board of Regents and force them to make Sonny Perdue the chancellor? I mean, that's a possibility. And it could just be, on the charitable side to Perdue, it could just be that, we talked about, she who shall not be named had that poll in her district showing 9% or so of people, of hardcore Republicans, would not vote. It could be that Perdue has just come to the conclusion that Brian Kemp cannot unite the Republican Party, and therefore he has to do it. I think all those things are possibilities, but at the end result, it's going to be a long, drawn out. If he does this, it's going to be a long, drawn out, bloody primary that's going to weaken the Republican Party and divide the Republican Party further than it already is, and strengthen the hand of whoever the Democrats nominate for governor.
Hold on one second, Scott. The other thing I'll point out here also is you're in a scenario right now where I know Doug Collins took a lot of flack for running against Kelly Loeffler, and I voted for Doug Collins, in the general election, and I still will defend him. I still will defend my vote on that. But Perdue's putting himself in a very similar situation, and if he runs and he loses, any itch he has for future office, probably he's done. He's done.
Influence as well. His influence would be
right.
Spin. Right. I wanted to respond to one of the arguments that are not arguments, but one of the points that Buzz made, and that was about the Marjorie Taylor Greene poll and the amount of Republicans that have told people we're never coming back. Well, those people didn't turn out for David Perdue in January. January 5th, they had an opportunity to turn back out for him, and they didn't. So David Perdue is going to face, whether he realizes it or not, hopefully he realizes it, those people are not coming back for you either. So you're not doing anything positive by throwing your name in the ring. You're certainly not going to have a better shot than Brian Kemp, based on the fact that Brian Kemp has a record that's really stellar, frankly, and you don't. At this point, you have legislative experience, but not executive experience at the governmental level. I know you're CEO and you can make that argument, but the reality is those people didn't come back for you either. So there is no opportunity for you to be the white knight in shining armor riding in on your horse saying, I'm here to save the day. It's not going to happen. They're not coming back for you. They didn't already. They had that opportunity. You did not get them to come back, and you had that opportunity already. And we already saw the result of that. So get out of the way. Get out of the way. Let the man do his job. Let the man run his campaign, and let the man take on the Democrats with a full united Republican Party. And you can be a voice right now to push back against the BS that we heard about Stacey Abrams being a better governor than Brian Kemp. You can help with that right now. You could do it right now, today. If you do that, you would help unite us. And that would be a better opportunity at winning come next November than if you got into the race anytime between now and March.
Buzz, go ahead.
There's also a certain segment of MAGA world that thinks that even David Perdue was not loyal enough to Donald Trump. So yeah, I think.
I mean, keep in mind
that buttresses Scott's point that it's not a slam dunk that he unites the GOP.
But keep in mind as well, just like Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue had the opportunity to, well, I guess he wasn't. No, he didn't have that. He was out of office officially. Never mind. Yep. I correct myself.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often, folks. So,
what, that Scott's wrong, or is
that,
it?
Well, that Scott corrects himself. Well, I mean, it happens very often that Scott's wrong. At least that's what I think. But
oh, Tyler Matzik.
I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So it's fine. It's fine. This is fine. Everything is fine. Let's see. We talked about the Braves at the top, which we kind of had to, considering Game 2 is tonight. They're coming back to Atlanta on Friday. But there's been a couple interesting stories that have come out in the last, I don't know, since the Braves clinched. The first one is the sort of politics that come into play with the Braves going to the World Series. Not just the Braves, but also the Houston Astros. And I'm not talking about the Houston Astros being very notable cheaters. I'm talking more about the fact that these are two states that have passed controversial. You guys would not say controversial, but
wouldn't. No.
Controversial voting election security legislation. Georgia obviously paid a pretty significant price for that, with the Major League Baseball moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta and into Denver. The Colorado Rockies hosted that. So there's been, Brian Kemp obviously put out a statement about that, basically mentioning that they may have taken the All-Star game away from us, but we're getting the World Series. We saw a lot of tweeting about that Saturday night after the Braves won the NLCS.
Can I read his tweet?
You may read his tweet.
His tweet was, while Stacey Abrams and the MLB stole the All-Star game from hardworking Georgians, the Braves earned their trip to the World Series this season and are bringing it home to Georgia. Chop on and go Braves.
Patricia Murphy at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has published a opinion piece, the title of which is "For the Love of Baseball, Lead the Braves Out of Politics." Okay, I don't even know where to start here, because I've always been so I think we've discussed this on the podcast before. I listen to a lot of music. A lot of that music is political in nature. Some of the bands I listen to are like very socialist. Fine. I don't have to agree with the lyrics. I like the music. There are sports stars who have they're actors and sports stars who have very different political views from what I have. John Smoltz being a very, very notable Republican who I think is even unvaccinated, or at least there was a story over a couple of weeks ago or months ago where he was unvaccinated, wouldn't get vaccinated, and he had to do his work from home, if I recall correctly. I disagree with that. All that said, this is stupid. The story.
But it's the way she worded it. It was like so condescending. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I read from the article real quick?
You don't have to ask, Scott. Just do it, man.
Okay. After a 2-decade drought, it finally happened. Atlantans and Georgians, two parts of a slightly dysfunctional extended family, cheered on the Braves, everybody's shared hometown team, with one joyful voice. But then, literally 2 minutes after Dansby Swanson scooped up a ground ball and threw it to Freddie Freeman at first base to clinch the series, Governor Brian Kemp dumped a huge, smelly pile of politics onto Braves fans' perfectly miraculous moment. Are you serious?
Well, it's not just that. It's also she quoted the tweet and then she said, just when we were all having so much fun. Come on.
You can agree or disagree with Kemp's tweet. He said what a whole lot of Georgians were thinking.
Yes, he did, including me, I think 95% of the people I know. I just literally
100%.
Where were you during the All-Star game? Where was the sentiment, Ms. Murphy, during the All-Star break, during that debate about SB 202, when Joe Biden was saying that Major League Baseball should pull the All-Star game? Where were you talking about how Joe Biden dumped a whole bunch of politics, smelly politics, onto baseball? Where were you? Come on, man. This is the reason why people don't trust the media as an institution. This right here, the lack of consistency, the transparent agenda making.
Yeah.
It's garbage. I could not believe this is the new political insider who's making this comment.
No,
well, it's also funny the effort to whitewash Stacey Abrams' involvement in all this.
Yeah,
she may not have, what she actually said to Rob Manfred, I don't know. And
she never talked to him. She talked to another official saying, "Please don't take the game away." However, she created the narrative that led to the decision for Major League Baseball to, she created the racism remarks. She created the political firestorm that led MLB to that decision. She never actually said the words, "take the game." The president did, though. The president of the United States absolutely did say that Major League Baseball should pull the All-Star game out of Atlanta.
And she also had an op-ed in USA Today around that time that had she prevailed upon USA Today to reword it to make it less look like she was calling for the All-Star game to be moved and calling for boycotts of Georgia. And essentially the op-ed was saying more or less, donate money to me, and lots of people did.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right, Scott. You were making the exact point I was about to make. She created the atmosphere, and then she acts like she's shocked when people did what the logical took her remarks to their logical conclusion.
Yeah.
So and look, I am when the Braves beat the Brewers, I sent out a tweet saying my dream of being able to boo Rob Manfred in Atlanta as he hands the Braves the trophy is still alive. And it's still very much alive, and I hope it happens.
So with that, also, Rob Manfred made some remarks, I think a couple of days ago, about the tomahawk chop. And as people who are listening to this podcast probably know, there was some controversy about this, in 2018, I think, or 2019, when the Braves played the St. Louis Cardinals in the division playoffs. One of the Cardinals pitchers, whose name escapes me off the top of my head, Ryan Helsley, is that his name?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Who's a member of the Cherokee Nation, expressed disgust or disdain for the tomahawk chop, and the Braves didn't use it, and then subsequently gave up 10 runs, I think in the first inning of the game, and never made their way back. My staff, I was actually in the office at Freedom Works at the time and had a very large TV, and was literally screaming at it as this was unfolding. And of course, some politicians blame the runs the Braves gave up on the lack of crowd participation, the lack of the use of tomahawk chop. Anyway, Rob Manfred has said it's a local decision whether the Braves use it or not in games 4 and 5 of the World Series.
And then he's satisfied with the relationship that the Braves have.
Yeah.
The Braves have since then strengthened their relationship.
So I have the quote.
Give the quote, but I have a little bit more to the story. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the quote is, it's important to understand we have 30 markets around the country. They're not all the same. The Braves have done a phenomenal job with the Native American community. And Manfred went on to say that the Native American community in Atlanta is wholly supportive of the Braves program, including the chop. And for me, that's the end of the story.
So what I was going to say was as people know, there's been a big controversy over sports teams' names. Obviously, the Washington football team, formerly the Washington Redskins, which is a problematic name. The Cleveland Indians, which is less of a problematic name, although I would argue Chief Wahoo was probably problematic. But the Cleveland Indians are now changing their name to the Cleveland Guardians. There has been the Atlanta Braves name has been similarly a source of controversy, although not as much in recent years, primarily because the Braves have that relationship with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians based out of Cherokee, North Carolina. But I do want to note that the principal chief of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians has said that the team should move on from the tomahawk chop, and because he said it was stereotypical Hollywood, and that the team should move on.
So can I just?
Well, let me real fast. Let me finish a couple more thoughts. You can't stop fans from doing it,
right?
Although the team doesn't necessarily have to encourage it. They can stop playing the drum beat, things like that. But it's not going to stop fans from doing it, because this was partially, I know Carole King, who was the Braves organist at the time, did play a similar melody for the tomahawk chop, but it very quickly caught on amongst fans, particularly in light of the Florida State Seminoles and the success they were having on the football field, which is basically where we got it from.
Well, you got it from Deion Sanders, right? I mean, Deion Sanders, a Florida State alum who, and superstar in all facets of life, frankly. I mean, Deion's a walking, elevated like Hercules, not quite a god, but he's getting close. And everything that Deion touches turns to gold. And he got up on one day, he got on top of the dugout and started leading the crowd in the tomahawk chop, and it was brought to Atlanta. Yeah. You look at, this is the key part, I think, is the intent and the relationship with the specific nation. Like in the NCAA tried to tell Florida State, you had to get rid of the Seminoles name, and the Seminole Nation came to Florida State's defense. Florida State is helping keep the Seminole Nation's legacy alive, its culture alive. It is not a relationship where they're just taking, they're giving a lot to. And the Seminole Nation is engaged and involved in all the decision-making around how the fans react. The tomahawk chop is an example. Chief Osceola on the horse before the game, spiking the flaming torch into the ground. All of that's been blessed by the Seminole Nation. And so the Seminoles were allowed to keep their name. It's not racist when they do it in Florida, because Seminoles have said, we like it, right? When it, I think the line becomes when people object, right? But you had a member of the Cherokee Nation represent Chief Nakahoma for a couple decades, where he was an actual Native American, and he dressed in that garb, and he had a teepee out there. I mean, we don't see any of that anymore. It's evolved now to the tomahawk chop.
Well,
it's interesting. The only thing I'm going to say to wrap up my thoughts on it is, I think intent matters when you are trying to say somebody's racist. I don't think people go to baseball games and do the tomahawk chop in an effort to try to offend somebody. They're trying to gin up energy for the guys on the field, to help their guys win, to perform better, and to cheer them on. And that's the intent. And I think that's where you have to draw the line.
And the Braves, Buzz, before I go to you, I'll know the Braves also had a couple other, they've had a couple of other issues with this in the past. Obviously, Chief Nakahoma was one of those. They also had the mascot that was obviously a darker Indian. He's been subsequently replaced by, there was one in between him and then now Homer, I think, and then Blooper. who's the current mascot, who I cannot stand.
Has a hot Twitter account though.
Yeah, and not only did we have Chief Nakahoma, we had
colored Philly fanatic is the problem.
Yeah.
Not only do we have Chief Nakahoma, we also had, I think, Princess Winalata as well. Although Chief Nakahoma seems to be the one everybody remembers. And but I know Russell Means, who recently died within the last several years. Russell Means, you may remember him as Chingach Cook from The Last of the Mohicans. He was a prominent Native American activist, also a Libertarian Party candidate for president. I think in 1988, he went against Ron Paul and lost for the nomination. But trivia. But no, it's pretty interesting, and I can foresee a scenario where the Braves actively, obviously, not encourage the tomahawk chop. Obviously, you can't stop bans, but I can even see a scenario where the tomahawk goes away.
Yeah, I mean, Buzz and I went to a game earlier this year, and when the fans broke out in the tomahawk chop, I looked at him like, "Hey, we're not supposed to do that anymore, right?" and right, but it is definitely muted from a couple of years ago. They don't do the full blown music anymore. They do have like a rhythmic drum beat. And occasionally you hear somebody, and I think it's somebody from the crowd. I don't even think it's a Braves employee who blows the whistle that signals people to start, and then people start doing it. And then at a certain point, they'll turn the lights off and everybody uses their cell phones in a, synchronized manner. But it's definitely muted from the way it was before. It's not nearly as organized. You don't have the guy beating on the drum like before. And so maybe it's just phasing out and fizzling out on its own. But you have an event like here in the World Series and people want to cheer for their team, they're going to do it. And it's not because they're racist. It's because they want to cheer for the Braves.
It's the same as the wave. You can't, I mean, like if the wave were some symbol of controversy, it's not going to happen.
It is. This is where we're going to disagree. I think if you're doing the wave, especially during the World Series, you should be summarily executed, period. No trial. No due process. You're dead. You're dead to me anyway.
When you add that to the list of things Scott hates, is the
wave. Yeah. I have a Jason Pye-like hatred for the wave.
I oppose the death penalty.
So do I, but not in that case. I mean, there are exceptions to everything, Jason.
Well, I don't have a lot to add. I think part of part of the problem here is it's a double standard. The Kansas City Chiefs in recent years have picked up doing this tomahawk chop. I don't see editorials and I don't see sports writers from Los Angeles wringing their hands like we did during the Dodgers series about how racist this all is. Deadspin this week, that detestable publication, said that these two teams don't even deserve to be in the World Series and there's nobody good to cheer for because it's the cheaters versus the racists. So that's an old tired take, and they should be a little more original in that. But the content, I think it's easy to pick on us because we're Southerners and we have a history, and it's easy to continue those stereotypes that everybody in there is doing it because of racist motives. And as Scott said, it's not true. It's people trying to cheer on their team. And look, just to be honest with it, there is that strain of Southern thinking that the more you tell us not to do it, the more we're gonna do it. Because
see that finger right there? You see that one?
Care what you think.
Mm-hmm.
You guys hate, the rest of the nation hates us anyway, so we're just going to be who we are, and I think you're right, Scott. At some point in time, it will fade away, but it'll be on our terms,
right? Not
on the national media's terms, not on the national sports media's terms, which wrings their hands over this, incessantly.
Yeah, the thought of you and the horse you rode in on comes to mind oftentimes when. Yeah.
So bringing it back towards national politics, that has a specific Georgia angle here. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has endorsed Herschel Walker in the race for United States Senate. This comes on the heels of some positive comments that Senate Majority, or excuse me, Senate. Did I say majority? I meant Minority Leader. Senate Minority Leader John Thune also made. Excuse me, Senate Minority Whip John Thune also made, saying nice things about Herschel. A couple months ago, guys, we were talking about how Mitch McConnell didn't want Herschel Walker to be to get in the race, and he was looking for literally anyone else. Talking with Latham Sadler, talking with other candidates, even dates, prospective candidates, rumored to be candidates at the time, David Ralston. That obviously didn't happen. And probably David Perdue.
Attempts to get him back into the race.
So here we are, Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, endorsing Herschel Walker for United States Senate. Obviously, this is going to have the NRSC will get involved now, most likely. This puts Latham Sadler, Gary Black, and other candidates looking for some way forward now that Herschel Walker is not just sucking up all the money, but he's also getting a pretty big endorsement. It was interesting because I think, Scott, you sent this through earlier. Gary Black's response is that these Herschel Walker's becoming the pick of the swamp, using the endorsement against Herschel Walker because McConnell is generally not liked amongst grassroots Republican voters. But Buzz, I'm going to go to you first here. What do you think? What do you think about McConnell's endorsement? Do you think it's a game changer for Herschel? And do you see any way that other candidates who are currently running can get any momentum now that this has taken place?
No, I think this just continues the trend. I mean, the limited polling there's been, shows Herschel in a big lead. His money advantage is there, and this just kind of, I think, McConnell didn't have a whole lot of choice. If he can avoid a nasty primary where lots of money is spent and lots of dirt and mud is thrown around, then he probably would like to see that happen. And, it certainly seems like the stars are aligning for Herschel to get the nomination. And I think this is just another puzzle piece that comes together to help Herschel lock this thing down. But yeah, it's increasingly tough. It's still a long way out. There's a lot of months left in this campaign, but the window of opportunity, unfortunately, for the other candidates is closing, and we'll see.
And Sadler hasn't put up bad numbers when it comes to fundraising. No. I mean, he raised another decent chunk in Q3. Yeah, into Q3. Scott, what do you make of it?
Well, I think the reaction of Gary Black. Now, listen, I'm pretty transparent about who I support and who I don't. I have not picked a U.S. Senate candidate. I'm not on Team Black, but I am going to share this. This was one of his. I'm on his mailing list. I'm on all the candidates' mailing list. But he said, I'll keep this brief. Herschel Walker is becoming the swamp's choice. The same gang that cost Republicans the U.S. Senate earlier this year is lining up behind him. This means he's going to have unlimited resource to run attack ads. And it means a lot of pressure is about to come our way to bend a knee and get out of this race. And that's not happening. I mean, that's the spin that the Black campaign is putting on this is, these are the same people who have already lost in Georgia. And does this mean that we're going to allow somebody from out of the state come in and tell us what we're going to do here? Herschel's not from around here no more. And Mitch hasn't been to Georgia and Lord knows how long. And now these are the people who are going to be picking our Senate candidate. I mean, This isn't what we do in the Republican Party in Georgia, right? And
endorsements, and there's always this debate over endorsements. I'm kind of, years and years ago, I heard Haley Barbour say he got endorsed by then Vice President Dick Cheney in his run for governor, Barbour's in Mississippi, and I forget the guy's name, but a NASCAR driver who hailed from Mississippi. And he said, no offense to the vice president, but the only endorsement that moved the needle was that NASCAR driver. So endorsements, politicians endorsing other politicians, I don't think move the needle among voters. I think they help with fundraising, and they help with, help build momentum and help and encourage the candidates' supporters already that we've picked the right team. So
I was just about to say that.
But Trump's a different figure in that he has an actual following. Does Mitch McConnell? Mitch McConnell doesn't have.
For those listening to us on the Apple podcast and other places that are audio only, I just held up a sign from a rally I attended where Trump endorses Kemp.
So what I was going to say that too, that the Trump endorsement considering the cult of Trump is going to carry a lot of weight. So I do.
He's got a following. I mean, Mitch.
But McConnell's endorsement will Mitch McConnell does have a following. It's called money.
Yeah,
it's called donors.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, the money, when McConnell endorses you, that means the NRSC is going to get behind you. His leadership PAC is going to get behind you, and money's going to flow into your race
and keep money out of other candidates' coffers.
Right. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Right. It helps that perception that this race is over. So why would you donate to anybody else? You got to remember
a couple of years ago, the NRSC would not do business with any company, any consulting firm that was working for a candidate that they hadn't endorsed.
Yeah.
So there's that.
The aforementioned Doug Collins experienced some of that. He had a hard time. There were people who would not, consultants and media people, all that sort of stuff, who wouldn't work with him because of that. The fear of not getting future work because of being frozen out by the NRSC.
Right. And one thing I will note, though, to play into Gary Black's point here, Roger Marshall, when he ran against Tim Huelskamp in the House and during a primary and beat him, he ran against him by saying that Tim Huelskamp was a Washington insider. As absurd as that sounds, because Huelskamp was a member of the House Freedom Caucus, he got kicked off the Agriculture Committee. That was another knock against him. But as absurd as that sounds, and as conservative as Huelskamp is, he got knocked off partially because of that. Tim Huelskamp is a Washington insider stuff. Now, you need a good candidate, someone who can go in with a specific message, and to sell that to voters. I don't think Gary Black is that candidate.
Well, yeah, it's hard for Gary to make that case when what did we talk about a couple of weeks ago? Dozens and dozens of legislators and elected officials all across the state. Former Governor Deal. I mean, the political power base in this state has in large measure come in behind Gary Black. So
yeah,
maybe the Georgia swamp is with to use Trump parlance, the Georgia swamp is with Gary Black. The DC swamp is with Herschel. So
yeah. So you guys being former legislators, you guys are probably missing out on the important special session that is coming soon. The Georgia General Assembly.
Next Wednesday, right?
The Georgia General Assembly will soon be coming into session to address redistricting.
It's going to be Hunger Games under the Gold Dome, baby. May the odds be ever in your favor.
I haven't seen if there was anything else in the call, but I gotta imagine. that at least there will be some discussion of other issues. But again, I haven't seen the call. Maybe not action taken on them.
I think the only other thing in the call was kind of a generic allowance for local matters, local legislation, which is not uncommon. And I think also that would allow the legislature to take up any local redistricting maps that need to happen. So
yeah. I'm curious. We discussed the initially drafted maps, which Scott downplayed as being completely irrelevant. But there's still a lot of speculation that Bordeaux is going to come out of this pretty safe, and that McBath is going to essentially take a bath and have her district be more Republican. But I'm curious. I'm curious what's going to happen over the course of the next couple of weeks in terms of this redistricting. Specifically, yeah. Georgia legislators, if you're listening, please get me out of the fourth.
Just remember, Jason's a libertarian and doesn't vote for you. So you don't owe him anything.
There's no libertarian who runs in my district for Congress. I could vote for you, and there are hard. I can't recall any. I've lived in this house for 14 years. There's never been a libertarian on my ballot for state Senate and state House. So yeah, I kind of do vote for whoever. Yeah.
So the Senate floated out their congressional map. And I think, to your point, Jason, I think it would be a mistake. I think what that map got right was it would be a mistake for Republicans to try to get too cutesy with this and make the 6th and the 7th Republican competitive districts. I think that'd be too difficult to do. So they made the choice probably the why. If you're going to sacrifice one of them to the, give one to the Democrats, you give them the 7th, because Gwinnett is probably trending more Democratic than it
And
is
Bordeaux is more moderate, frankly.
Yeah.
Pick your poison.
Yeah, and look, no disrespect meant to Congressman Bordeaux. I think Lucy McBath, if there's going to be somebody who has a possibility of running for higher office between the two of them, again, no disrespect to Carolyn Bordeaux, but Lucy McBath is a person with a very, heartfelt story about why she got involved in politics, and with the tragic death of her, murder of her son, and I think that she is probably viewed more as a rising star in the Democratic Party than Bordeaux is. She's a budget person, a budget nerd. I can say that as a fellow nerd, no disrespect meant, but she's not the kind of person who's lights up the room when she speaks and is incredibly charismatic. She's the kind of person you want if you're a Democrat. She's a hardworking person who can dig into the budget and help them craft it in the way they want it. But I think what the Senate map got right was you got to pick one of those to give to the Democrats, and probably the 7th.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
Democrats came out with their own map, a congressional map that was a 7-7 map. So
and for the first time didn't have paper wispy fishing line
gerrymandering
wide lines drawn into it.
Well, Scott, we know that Democrats never gerrymander.
Right.
Republicans gerrymander.
And we also know
go
map,
look at the Illinois map.
No, it's not gerrymandering. That's sensible map drawing.
Right. And we also know that the Democrats would not have released that map if they were in power. That's not how it would look if they were actually the majority in this state. It would be completely different than that. And that is not what they would actually support. It would look more like what Illinois has done. And we all know that. So
one other thing about this, I think I was reminiscing with a former colleague earlier today that, we were freshmen. We were in our first year in 2011 when this special session came in. We had, practically zero impact on what all happened. But, the session, I believe, starts next Wednesday, right?
Correct.
November 3rd. It's pretty soon, about this time, we were all called into a caucus meeting and shown the maps. And the maps that at that time, the Senate produced what they wanted the Senate seats to look like. The House produced what they wanted the House seats to look like. And the congressional delegation had pretty strong influence. Republican and Democrats in the congressional delegation had pretty big influence on what those maps ended up looking like. And once those were introduced, we were all shown those, then they were released publicly. And really those maps stayed pretty true. There were tweaks here and there. There was swapping of this precinct and that precinct, etc. And we haven't seen that yet. And I don't, that perhaps will happen early next week. But, I think I was told today that Speaker Ralston has mused that, we might have to drag this thing out until after, there's a lot of negotiation that needed to go on, and this thing might last past Thanksgiving. I can't imagine that.
Who's he negotiating with? I mean, who's he negotiating with? The South Georgia boys who are going to be all grouped together? I mean, and
one thing too, in 2011, Governor Deal, it was very plain. Governor Deal was the guy. The Senate had their ideas, House had their ideas, the congressional delegation had their ideas, and Governor Deal was the guy who, to his credit, was kind of looking at the big picture. How do we hold on to keep our majorities for 10 more years? And he was the guy who brought all those factions together and eventually put his fist down on the table and said, "This is what we're doing." Who's going to do that this time? And that will be interesting to see who emerges. Is it going to be Governor Kemp, or is it somebody else? Or
could you imagine John Burns doing that? I mean,
no.
I mean, the majority leader in the House. How about Butch Miller? He's running for LG. Does he really want to?
Doesn't want to anger anybody. If you're
right,
Miller, you want everybody happy with you. And,
right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be there right now. When you started this segment, Jason, I put my hands together and I thanked the good Lord I wasn't there, and that was sincere. I wouldn't want to be there right now. I don't think you could pay me enough to be there right now and go through what they're going to go through. Because at the end of the day, somebody's going to get drawn together too. There is no way around that. Now, Democrats will probably get drawn together, but there are going to be Republican districts that are going to have 2 sitting Republicans going to have to decide which one of us is, or are we going to run against each other? And you have people who are close with each other, and you don't have the Mark Hatfields or the Jason Spencers in these underpopulated areas anymore to draw in together. You've got a whole bunch of guys down there and ladies who are very close, and they're not considered rabble rousers or troublemakers in any way.
So in the House, you got 3 of them, right? So David Clark is not running again.
Right.
So you can carve up his district just up the street from me. You can carve it up to do what you need to do in Gwinnett County.
Philip Singleton and Sherry Gilligan.
So Singleton and Gilligan, Gilligan for sure is probably in a position where she has to give up population, so you can shrink her district. She's giving up population, and you don't have to draw her in with somebody. You don't have to draw her in with somebody else. You might. Singleton probably the same. I don't know. I'd have to. Noonan County's probably growing quickly.
Yeah.
But
if you're a sitting House rep right now in that area, you don't want to be drawn into the same district as Philip. I don't think.
No,
I think Sherry.
Sherry's very popular with with a big crowd in Forsyth County. So
right.
Well,
yeah.
I'll just repeat. Please get me out of the 4th. That's my only request.
You're not really concerned about the strategic helium reserve, as Congressman Johnson's very concerned about that.
I am just as worried about that as I am Guam capsizing into the seas.
Well,
yeah, I mean, which is to say I'm not. So, by the way, I did hear something random on a YouTube video yesterday. Since you mentioned that, sometimes I just keep YouTube on during the day. I like background noise, and the background noise basically said if you've ever experienced if you ever done anything with helium, you're probably capturing a gas that was developed at during the Big Bang, which I thought was cool. I didn't realize that. I had never thought of that. But yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So random thing there. So got a couple more quick topics, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on these, but I do think that this next one is pretty interesting. Georgia Republican Party Chairman David Shafer, who was standing on stage when Donald Trump essentially endorsed Stacey Abrams for governor. I just feel like it should be pointed out. I mean, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
That's what he said.
He is in a bit of a tiff with Vic Reynolds, who runs the Georgia Bureau investigation over what is essentially voter fraud or alleged voter fraud, which no one has proven and no one will ever prove, at least on a wide scale. Well, Shaver's in league with a group called True the Vote, which is based out of Texas, and this group apparently bought terabytes of data. What's in this data, I don't know. My assumption is geolocation data.
It is.
And they have allegedly have a whistleblower or someone who can back up a source who can back up their claims related to activity around the mail drop or the Dropbox ballot boxes that were around the state during the 2020 election. Yep. But Shafer has not been able to produce the name of the source, or at least unwilling to produce the name of the source. Vic Reynolds essentially told Shafer that you either need to name the source, or this is like,
I don't have probable cause, right? I mean,
exactly.
We're supposed to get a warrant in this country before you go snooping on people's metadata.
Well, let's get back to that. Scott, you're the one who brought this to my attention, brought this to Buzz and I's attention last week. So I'll turn it over to you here.
Well, I had multiple phone calls. Hey, have you seen this letter that Vic Reynolds sent to the party? And we posted that in its entirety. It's on the Peach Pundit website. You can go and read it for yourself, along with some questions that I posed, where basically what I heard from multiple sources was that David Shafer, the chairman of the GOP here in Georgia, went to a group of activists and said, the governor simply refuses. I have laid out all the evidence. I have laid it out for him. and the governor simply refuses to investigate our claims of voter fraud. And the data that he was talking about is this geolocation data that True the Vote provided to the GBI. Now, the GBI looked into the claims. They said, well, that's interesting. There are 239 cell phones that have apparently gone hundreds of times to the same drop boxes, or within 100 feet of the same drop boxes over and over again. And they provided that to the GBI and say, here's a bunch of data. You should go look into it. And the GBI under Vic Reynolds said, well, you told me that you have a source, a whistleblower, if you will, and I will personally protect them. I will give them immunity and I will put them under protection, and they can come tell their story. And the GOP says, no, we're not going to do that. Over a series of months, the GBI keeps asking. Shafer has this conversation with activists within the party, blaming the governor, which you now have a sitting state GOP chairman actively working against a sitting governor and trying to stir dissent against a sitting governor. That's problematic by itself, but he says to them he won't do anything about it, which wasn't the whole story. So Vic Reynolds comes back in a written letter. He sends it to the party. He also sends that letter to True Vote, and he says in that letter, I need probable cause, which means I need to talk to your witness, provide the witness. Otherwise, there's nothing to go on here. And that was it. And then Shafer says the next day, after we ran our story, AJC ran a story, Georgia Public Broadcasting ran a story, all of this same type of thing. And he says, I didn't even see your letter. You sent it to our actual address instead of my mailing address. So I didn't get it. Well, he never mentioned that True to Vote was also a recipient to that letter. And it had been 2.5 weeks since the letter was sent. And so you're trying to tell me, Mr. Shafer, that True to Vote had the letter and you didn't, and they never shared it with you and there was no action taken. They didn't say they didn't get it. So Shafer writes out a letter. He's trying to deflect the fact that he still has not provided this witness. He's trying to deflect and say, I've told you all these things. I've given you video evidence. So Vic Reynolds comes back with a second letter in response to Shafer, and he says, no, you didn't. You didn't give me video evidence, and you need to tell me who the witness is so I can talk to him. Otherwise, we're not moving forward. Nothing's changed. So that's where we are today. You have a chairman who has spun and deflected the fact that he still, to this day, has access to a witness and will not provide him to the GBI, and who's using the fact that GBI can't move forward as a political wedge within the party to sow dissent against the sitting governor. It's crazy, man. Where do you go from here? How do you make this better?
And then you have the other issue of, oh, by the way, you can purchase geolocation data of individuals who, I mean, like that in and of itself is alarming, but Buzz, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a lot to add to what Scott has. I'll just point out down the street from me is a library that had a drop box. And I guarantee you it's less than 100 feet from the road that I drive by on a regular basis, many times a week. Is my name, am I one of the 200 and what'd you say, Scott, 239?
239.
It's possible that I'm one of the 239, never went to the drop box. So I think, you know, as many of these, I guess what it leads me to think, as many of these claims of voter fraud that have ended up being, there are reasonable explanations to suggest that it's not voter fraud.
Well, the other thing too is that metadata is not a perfect science. Just because somebody has their phone on doesn't mean it's automatically transmitting or pinging off that tower with metadata. And so you could have hundreds and thousands of people go into an area and it doesn't ping for that reason. Right. You know, unless there's some active back and forth. You know, and Shafer's letter to Vic Reynolds, he says, you know, an innocent suggestion would be that people left their phones in their cars, but the number of ballots pulled from those boxes are disproportionate. It's just you're saying that 1,000 people or more walked up to a ballot and dropped it in without their cell phone in their hand. Well, it's not necessarily going to ping every single moment. Right. I mean, if they walked up to it and it was in their hand, doesn't necessarily mean they didn't have their cell phone in there either. So this is not how cell technology works. That being said, you have an opportunity to provide the witness.
Yeah.
And as a member of the party and as a Republican in Georgia, I would call upon you to bring forth the witness.
Yeah.
And you can end this little charade and we can move on. They can investigate and find out the same thing you did. And then there's bigger issues, or you have to drop it, man. One of those two things has to happen. Either you do what they're asking you to do, which is within your power to do it, or you stop with this dissent sowing stuff that you're doing right now. One of those two things has to happen.
And I know, there's been, another person who shall not be named who loves to send emails out and make bold proclamations, and added me to this person's email. She keeps adding me to her email list over and over. Is trying to make the accusation that Vic Reynolds is somehow in on it. Vic Reynolds is he was district attorney of Cobb County, well respected across the state as a tough law and order guy who loved to put criminals behind bars. I'm sure I have no reason that I see nothing in Vic Reynolds' past conduct that would make me think that as head of the GBI, if he thought that there were voter fraud there, that he would try to sweep it under the rug.
Not a chance.
He's a by the book district attorney, and as Scott pointed out, you got to have witness.
One thing I will note real fast is back in 2018, the United States Supreme Court issued a ruling in Carpenter v. United States about related to government acquisition of cell site records. This is not a government acquisition of cell site records, but this ties into my day job, and that does not prohibit private companies from obtaining those records and then selling them to the government. There is actually a loophole in the Carpenter opinion that does allow the government to buy cell site records or any other. This is usually dealing with data. I'm not sure how it applies to cell sites, but this is usually dealing with data, like data from Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. Hold on, Scott. So I'm not sure. I shouldn't say cell site record. This deals with cell site records, but the case did. But I am curious to know how if the government could buy this information, because if they can, there is a legislative remedy that's been introduced in this Congress. It's called the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act, but I do not know, and I'm going to have to email Senator Wyden's office in the morning and figure out if this would apply.
This would be the question I would ask: is the purpose that they use it for matter, right? Yeah. If they're doing a blanket, we're just looking to see if we can find something that sticks out, that's not probable cause, right?
Right.
If there's a witness, or do they have to have some sort of corroborating witness? That would be the question I would ask, Jason. Yeah. Because at this point, I think the government can use it, but maybe they're using it for traffic patterns, or, not criminal. They're not trying to charge somebody with a crime, but they're trying to figure out what the flow of traffic at a certain time of day is in a roundabout. Is a roundabout needed? Do we need to do a diverging diamond? I can see where there'd be value for the government to purchase that type of data in those instances. But when you start creeping in on somebody's Fourth Amendment rights,
well, I will say, I will argue the Fourth Amendment, the prohibition against illegal searches and seizures applies to the government, right? At least a strict originalist, constitutionalist interpretation or constructionist interpretation of it. That said, that backdoor, that loophole that exists in Carpenter, that's why I really want to find out if that applies here, and I will be emailing Senator Wyden's office in the morning.
To go back to your initial point, Jason, this is terrifying. That a company who wants to, allege voter fraud, can gather all this information and start making these claims. And I realize they're not accusing me or anybody else of a crime, but what if, what if somehow somebody were to figure this out? Buzz Brockway lives down the street from and why in the world was he driving by this? He's a known never Trumper, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. There's people outside my house trying to confront me all the time, all because they could collect this kind of data. That is terrifying.
Yeah. Before we go, last stop on the laundry list of topics. There's an election next Tuesday in Virginia, and I find it very interesting considering a lot of the things that's going on. My co-host on my other podcast, Reclaiming My Time, Nathan Leamer, lives in the DC metro area in Virginia, And he told me about a month ago that education was quickly becoming an issue in the governor's race. And I was like, yeah, people say that. But and I know it helped DeSantis in 2018, but people say that, but very rarely is it actually a thing. You hear about education being an issue in almost every election, but it very rarely actually is. In this situation, it actually appears to be an issue, and that's because of Terry McAuliffe's stupid remark that parents should not have a say in their kids' education. He said that during a debate, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it has reverberated throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. And yes, it is one of four states that are actually Commonwealths.
Go Kentucky.
And Massachusetts, and I forget what Pennsylvania. Yeah, that's right. So I note that to say there was a poll that came out this week, and I'm not real familiar with the polling company here, and I'm pulling up 538 as we talk to see where they are in terms of 538's polling ratings. But that said, there was a poll that came out from Signal that showed some pretty interesting results. It says here, when it comes to voters with a child who's in K through 12 education present in the household, Glenn Youngkin, who's the Republican nominee, carries 56.3% of the vote, while Terry McAuliffe carries an even 39. McAuliffe's on the ropes. That race is becoming, it is neck and neck going into the last week. McAuliffe, I'm hesitant to say Youngkin will win. He definitely could win. And
what
Buzz,
a coup, right?
Yeah. Buzz, yeah. You work on education policy a lot over there at the Georgia Center for Opportunity. And I know this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart. So let me start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked at various times on the podcast, and certainly at my work, we have been watching this. Parents are poll after poll after poll has shown since the beginning of this pandemic, parents want change in schools. They don't want education to stay the way it has been for a long time. They want change. What form or shape that takes, remains to be seen. But then you have recalcitrant school boards. Loudoun County in Virginia, in particular, there's been an all-out war between the school board members and their constituents. This has happened in many places across the country, but there's been a lot of focus on Loudoun County, even to the point where Loudoun County has dispatched people to infiltrate parents groups to try to expose them, and then you had of course McAuliffe's comments that parents should not have a say in what kind of things are taught in the classroom. That should be left to professionals. Then the Washington Post followed that up with a big op-ed to either yesterday or today, saying the same thing, which Randy Weingarten, the head of the big, powerful American Federation for Teachers Union, happily retweeted. And there's this growing move. I think you were seeing it all across the country. It's playing out in particular in Virginia, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And I just pulled up real quick the Real Clear Politics just to show you how close it is in Virginia. The last 6 polls, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The last 6 polls, the largest margin was McAuliffe by 3. 3 of them are ties, and 2 of them are McAuliffe plus 1. So I mean, look, Virginia, is Youngkin going to win? I don't know. He's got a chance, which is, in a state that everybody assumed is a pretty solidly blue state. For this to be happening is really astounding. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch what happens.
Yeah, this one I may actually watch the returns come in, but Scott, I mean, there's an enthusiasm gap here too, because you're seeing it play out in rallies where Youngkin's pulling in huge crowds. And McAuliffe's not getting near the crowds. And not only that, McAuliffe is calling in literally every person he can, including Stacey Abrams, as we mentioned on the podcast last week.
We got to drill in on that a little bit too.
Yeah, but and he's still running neck and neck despite bringing in Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Stacey Abrams. They had a concert with Dave Matthews where Stacey Abrams was actually in Charlottesville, where Stacey Abrams actually attended. I gotta wonder, if you're a Democrat and McAuliffe, even if he barely wins, you got to be looking at next November going, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is a lesson for Republicans everywhere, here in Georgia, in Virginia, doesn't matter where. If you run an issues-based campaign and you put your focus on these types of issues. These are the things that separate us from Democrats. These are how we're different. We want you to be in control of your life. We want you to be in charge of your children's education. We want to have you in charge of your own economic opportunity. We want government to be as small as possible, shrunk as much as possible, protect your constitutional rights, and give you the opportunities that make America great and always have. And you get to choose your own path in this country. Those are the things that we should be focusing on. Youngkin's done that brilliantly at this point, and it is showing even in a blue state. In a purple state, he is showing other Republicans how to run. His campaign team should be lifted up. We should do case studies on them. We should praise them. We should figure out how we can take what they have done and model it in other areas. It's been amazing to watch, frankly, and it's all about the messaging about why is Youngkin different than McAuliffe. Yeah. This is why. He pulled the curtain back. He said the quiet part out loud. You don't have a part to play in your children's education. That's what Democrats believe.
Yeah.
All of them believe that. There isn't one that doesn't believe that. They believe that they know better than you on how your child should be educated. And it has nothing to do with anything like critical race theory or anything like that. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about whether or not you should have a say at any point in your child's education. Yeah. And that's what makes our party different. And that's what makes us better. And we should be capitalizing on that. Win, lose, or draw on Tuesday for Mr. Youngkin. Well done, sir. Teach me Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Buzz, you wanted to talk. Go ahead, Buzz. Sorry.
Well, I just real quickly wanted to build on what Scott was saying there. Glenn Youngkin, unlike Burt Jones here in Georgia, unlike Vernon Jones here in Georgia, unlike Jody Heiss here in Georgia, has not talked about the stolen election, etc. In fact, it's been Terry McAuliffe who, while Stacey Abrams was there, talking about how Stacey really won, the election was stolen from her. He said that that George Bush stole. He had questions about, he thought that George Bush stole the election in 2000, and then he's talked about how he really might not accept the results of the election next Tuesday unless he wins. So, I mean,
that's the road that
script is flipped.
That's the road that Stacey Abrams has paved, and every losing candidate's going to drive that Mack truck down from now until forever.
Yeah. Yep. Buzz, I was going to give you the last word, but you've already taken it. So we're going to peace out here. Thanks, folks, for watching the Peach Pundit Podcast or listening to the Peach Pundit Podcast. Make sure you download, like, subscribe, read. What else? Smoke signals. I don't know. But thanks for tuning in, and we hope you guys have a good rest of the week. We hope to see you next week. So peace out.
Go Braves.
Go Braves.